Welcome. I am Scott Alterator and I'm a committee member here at LEA Victorian chapter. I'm also a director at IDE, a company specialising in the translation of ideas between education and space. And I'm a research fellow at Learn at the University of Melbourne. I'm a philosophy and history teacher by trade, and I'm a parent to 3 teenagers, well, one 12-year-old boy as well, but don't tell him that he's not a teenager just yet. This is a pretty unique event. We normally meet every month, and we meet at a site and we tour around, we listen to an architect or a principal, we share some stories and we eat cheese and we drink some wine. But with the various restrictions, this isn't possible, of course. So what we're doing tonight is attempting to replicate the sharing of stories, the exchange of ideas, generate some thinking across the next hour or so without being able to meet in person. And we're going to do our best to do that tonight. And before we get started, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country, and many of tonight's participants are on the lands of the Kulin Nation, which is in Victoria. I'm in central Victoria and I'm on Dja Dja Wurrung land, and that's also part of the Kulin Nation. But we also have folks joining us from the Darug or the Eora peoples in Sydney, the Tarbal Nation around Brisbane. We also have people joining us from the lands of the Noongar in Western Australia and some other places around Australia. So I don't mean to miss anybody, but what we really want to do is acknowledge the elders past and present, any Indigenous folks joining us tonight. We have people joining us from all over the world, actually. We've got people from all of the eastern states of Victoria, as well as South Australia and Western Australia. Welcome, tuning in from different time zones. We've got quite a few people from New Zealand as well, so hello to you. Some people in Hong Kong, and I saw someone had joined us from Paris as well. So if you are here, welcome. Let's get on with the hour. We have a couple of functions as part of this Zoom this evening. We've got the chat and the Q&A. So if you've got a question as it goes along, or you wish to reach out to somebody, then by all means jump in, and don't let any thought pass you by or any question that you're thinking of go to waste. Be sure to pop it into that forum. We've got Liesl tracking that tonight, and we're going to hoover those up as best as possible and make sure that we capture all of your questions, and we can put that to the panel, who I'll introduce shortly. If you've got a question, once we hear from the panel members, if you think, oh, I'd really like to direct my question to that person, then just pop that in the question, and we'll do our best to make sure that that's nice and clear. We normally at these events, we also have sponsors, and that allows us to put the events on. And tonight is no exception. Interface are the sponsors for our event this evening. It's really critical work. It allows us to continue these events in normal years, and it definitely allows us to do it in this strangest of years like this one. I really want to thank Interface for sponsoring us tonight. Really, this is an exchange of ideas. This is us just swapping thoughts and seeing how far we can take something, what we can learn, what we might take away. And to jump in and sponsor us to do that kind of activity is fantastic. I really appreciate that. So I'm just going to introduce Carla. Many of you know Carla from Interface, and she's going to say a few words. Over to you, Carla.
Thank you. I'll just get myself organised. Okay, so I am Carla. I'm one of the account managers at Interface. Hopefully you've all seen me around, and I'm a familiar face to you. I just wanted to say on behalf of the team at Interface that it's great to be at another LEA event, although virtual, and I'm sure that we're all looking forward to seeing each other again in person. I am looking forward to being able to see you all face to face and have some of our memories from past events. And in the meantime, we just wanted to let you know that we are proud to be local, proud to be made locally, supporting local communities, local businesses, and it's really important to us at Interface. We believe that as a company, we have a responsibility to have a positive impact on people and the planet, and with your continued support, we hope to succeed. We care about your well-being, the spaces you create for the well-being of others, and we're here to help in any way we can. So please reach out, even if it's just to say hi and have a chat. I look forward to talking to you again. Just wanted to share with you some things that we've got coming up. With LEA, we're hosting a webinar on the 30th of this month with renowned architect Oliver Heath. I hope that you received our invite, and if you didn't, please reach out to LEA or myself and we can send you a link to that invite. It's a really interesting webinar. And then we are also launching some new product, which we think should be some much needed fun and colour in your lives. And you get a chance to meet one of our designers. So if you're interested in that and you haven't already received an email, reach out to me and we can send that. And then finally, just, you know, as a mother and a newly professional homeschooler, I not great at it, I will say, pretty bad. I do have a really great appreciation now for the schools, the teachers and the learning environments. And so I'm personally looking forward to this presentation today. And yeah, so thanks everyone. Thanks for your support and keep well and stay safe.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you very much. I just want to stress how much we appreciate Interface stepping up and making and supporting this event and making it possible. So thank you very much. For those people who have just stepped in the room, I'm doing one minor thing that seems to be, there we are, that's better. And we've got quite a few more people than we did at the very beginning. You have missed a few introductions and hopefully you just caught Carla's presentation. And we're about to start the evening and the content proper, so don't stress too much that you might have missed a lot of things. Did miss an acknowledgement of country and an introduction by me. We can catch up on some of those things. The first thing that we decided when we thought, oh, look, let's have an event. We really think it's important that we do some reflection on homeschooling. We prioritised capturing the voice of the students. We see them as really critical stakeholders. We think that it's important that we capture their voice, that we represent their experiences. A little bit like Carla, although I am a professionally trained teacher with more than a decade's experience, more than one of my days' experience as a professional homeschooler ended in tears for more than one person in the house, which I don't feel particularly good about. Something I was clearly doing something that wasn't right. I still haven't figured that out, although I'm not going to linger on that for too long. Maybe just out of self-preservation. But tonight we get to hear from the students, and I think that's important. I really want to thank Mike from Moonshine and the team down there who helped us pull this together. It's a little lo-fi, but I think that's just kind of the nature of it. We sent it out during isolation, so people were recording these on their phones and you'll see into their homes, but I think it's a really candid capture of what the students experienced, and there's quite a bit to take out of this. So for those people who are in the room whose children contributed, thank you to you as well very much. So Liesl, are you ready to go with the film?
I am indeed.
I'm Ruben, I'm in grade 4.
Hi, I'm Val and I'm in year 7.
Hi, I'm Isaac and I'm in grade 2.
Hi, I'm Prep M.
And my name is?
Alba.
Hello, my name is Nathan. I'm in 11th grade.
Hi, I'm Jack and I'm in grade 4.
Hi, Zoe. Foundation.
Hi, my name is Scarlett and I'm in year 8. I've been using my bedroom and I sit in different spots like my desk and my bed, and it's not shared with anyone else.
This table right here
I've been using a mixture of my bed and my desk.
It is usually being in the kitchen or right here.
Sometimes it's some writing on the table. Sometimes I do my fix my reader on the sofa.
The space I've been learning with for my home learning has been my room.
My desk in my bedroom.
I share my room with Jack, my brother, when he's doing editing. Yeah, I've been sharing it with Isaac a bit.
I sometimes share my desk with my father.
In the study.
Not really, I'd occasionally go into my room. I use the computer for in home learning for Seesaw and do my activities. It's quiet when you guys aren't around.
Like communication with my teacher, because then I can send long bits in quick ways.
Having a quiet environment with little distractions seemed to be the best way for my learning environment to be as good as possible.
Being able to be in like the comfort of my own house and like I can sit in my bed or at my desk, which is more comfortable than sitting in a classroom.
I can see Mum and Dad whenever I want, and also have the computer, and also I'm right next to my snuggly toys, like you are.
You can do your work in your own time. You don't have to do 70-minute slots.
A computer, and I have meetings on it.
Another good thing about being at home is the computer is there, so you can learn skills on the computer. I learned how to use Photoshop and Premiere Pro, which is an editing app. Sound-wise, I can't really tell you about that stuff. It's very confusing.
Yeah, very quiet, but once my sisters were there, wasn't, but not in the morning when they haven't gone to school yet. It wasn't for my school morning meeting.
The communication between students and teachers was like using video conferences, because we didn't have any of that.
You didn't get to see it much outdoors.
Probably not being able to see, like be in contact with teachers directly, and it can be a bit harder when you're trying to like ask them questions.
It's too close to the TV. I get distracted. Not being able to see my friends.
I was sort of a bit scared to talk to the whole class.
I feel like interruptions and general distractions from like phones and other stuff like that.
Home learning on my own timetable.
Playing with Barbies, because there's no Barbies at school.
I'm using the computer.
Not having to do all the working, so you can just like go outside, kick the ball in your own time, and don't have to stay in your own classroom for the whole day.
I'll miss the comfort of my own home, like my bed, and being able to be like warm instead of a cold classroom.
I'll miss my ability to do homework like whenever I want, or just work in general, like waiting a few hours before doing the classwork I'm given.
We finished school early. It was easier to communicate with people.
Quietness level. At school, everyone's talking to each other and all the other classrooms are talking, and yeah, it doesn't really work out because it's a bit tricky to concentrate.
There's always food to have, and not having to go to your lunchbox, so you can just go to the kitchen and eat an apple.
Maybe more openness.
I would make it look like my house.
Probably more comfortable chairs, like they're all plastic. Maybe like cushions, more like comfortable and warm, more like homey.
It would be good at school if you could kind of choose your order of the day and do it. And what could be changed at school to be like my home learning environment? You could so you could use the computer and learn on the computer. What have I missed about my school learning environment while homeschooling? Friends.
I miss seeing my friends.
And being able to say hello to your friends and everything. Playing down ball, sports.
I miss seeing my teacher. I miss my friends, playing with my friends.
That I just see lots of my friends and the playgrounds.
I've missed the ability to contact teachers easily, just by walking up and talking to them, as opposed to having to email or other forms of communication which seem more formal.
I miss being like in direct contact with my friends, but I have stayed in contact with them, like on social media.
So I miss the fact that there are no teachers right there and then for them to be able to help you with your work.
Having a big space and seeing my friends. I missed Jeff, my sports teacher.
Kinda, yeah. Not too much, but yeah, a bit.
Next question. I think most of them just do it in their room or their kitchen table like me.
No, I was not able to see any of their spaces.
I have been able to see some of my friends' rooms through other social medias, and they're like learning spaces similar to mine.
Since we'd have the camera up, they would always just be facing them. Like you couldn't see anything below me, you could only see my face.
I have partially been able to see the space my teachers have been in, which seemed to be a similar space to mine, with a desk and a bookshelf and a computer.
I haven't learnt anything about my teacher during homeschooling.
Most teachers do have their cameras on, but not all. And I have learnt a few things, like one teacher didn't know he had so many degrees in like different things besides teaching. And I also found it amusing of like some of the decorations they had. Like one teacher had a frog clock in the back and you can just watch it move.
NR.
No!
Because it's boring. I don't really like learning through Zoom because my teacher Joseph can't really help me, and other people get a lot of attention and I didn't get very much attention, so I just needed more help, I guess.
It's a very different experience to contrast the two. Prefer aspects of each of them.
I like when we get back to school that all the tables are separated, like if we're taking a test, like 24/7. So I kind of like miss sitting next to friends. And it'll be a bit different, like having to wipe our tables and chairs down every single time, because we don't usually do that.
That's all I have.
Fantastic. I just, again, want to thank all of the students who were willing to go on camera. One of those children was mine. I had 3, but I could only convince one of them to participate. So it's actually quite a task, and it's pretty brave, and I really thank them very much for that. It's a really nice insight. I think my son gave away the fact that of all of the roles that I could play in homeschooling, principal, teacher, PE teacher, the thing that I nailed best out of all of them was canteen lady. So good on him. Thank you for giving that away. Although I'm pretty proud of that. We did eat well, and we ate whenever we wanted. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to some of the insights that come out from our panels tonight, from our panels' perspectives and their experiences tonight. So I'm just going to preface this with this next section with a couple of comments. So amongst this disruption and uncertainty, the interruptions and the fear within all these redesigned bedrooms, kitchens and lounge rooms, and I'm often asking myself pretty fundamental questions about education. So how much is it about learning, and how much is it really about progress? How much of it is about growth, personal growth, being in the world, being a person in this particular world at the moment? But at the same time, I'm asking really practical questions like, will that desk fit in and around that corner? I've had a few challenges like that. Will the Wi-Fi support 3 Zoom meetings at once? Not to mention Zoom meetings after 4 p.m. and those Zoom meetings have to compete with the Fortnite arena play. I'm not exactly sure still what that is, but that's a thing that my Zoom connections often have to compete with. So I'm kind of tackling questions that concern equity and fairness as well, sustainable systems, health of my friends many of whom still work in schools, and many of them are actually older. And so there's a range of things that I'm considering. One of the key questions for tonight, it relates to what we can learn about the design of schools or the spatial implications for schools, given what we have learned and continue to learn through this particular process. Now, space of a school does not occur in a bubble, and it's not unrelated to all dimensions of the school's reality. So I've mentioned some of them just now. We've assembled this really fantastic panel of people to help us take the conversation deeper in all directions across the next little while. So I'm going to introduce them to you now. They'll each have a few minutes to reflect on their experiences, and then this will just help us understand where they are, where they're coming from, what they bring to the forum. And then you can start to send in your questions as well. And be sure, I know people have been keen and lots of people are well experienced in Zoom now, but people are using the chat. So I'm not having a chance to really spend some time in the chat, but I know Liesl is hoovering those up, as I said before. So we'll make sure that we get to your questions. Genevieve, I'm going to start off with you. I'll just give a quick bit of an introduction, but just to let you know, your first cab off the rank. Genevieve's an executive principal. She's got many years experience in school leadership. She has experience in leading school mergers in particular. And so one of these was in 2010 when she was appointed to merge 3 secondary colleges in Western Melbourne. Last year, she was appointed to merge the 4 secondary colleges in Shepparton. And in 2020, the 4 schools merged and are currently operating on 3 of the original sites, while a new school is being built on the 4th site. Now, this school has got a really good profile on the project. It's got a good profile on the Department of Education and Training website. You can go searching for that. It looks fantastic. Genevieve, welcome to you. I'm going to pass over to you now for a few minutes of comment and reflections on the last little while.
Well, thanks, Scott. And nice to see everybody. So I just want to make some comments about remote learning. It was quite a shock to all of us. At the start of term 1, our 4 schools merged. So that meant a lot of change for people and a lot of things being done differently. Followed very hard upon with COVID situation and teachers having to learn how to teach from home. So it was a mixed experience for both the teachers and the students. Some students really shone in the remote learning and others didn't engage at all. And there was a whole lot of students and teachers in between. All of the teachers obviously engaged, but not all the students. So our experience has been that in the main, the students were very happy to be coming back to school. They missed their friends, they missed the social interaction of the classroom. But we also found that many committed and high achieving students did very well in remote learning, as did some of the students who are quite disconnected in class. So our supposition there is that what some of the students who we saw in the video were saying is that the distractions of having lots of people around them is difficult for some students. And we've had a few parents ask, can their child still learn from home and maybe have a blend of coming to school and staying at home? So vast numbers of students in our situation were not equipped for remote learning. So that meant that many of our families didn't have the internet at home, didn't have computers, and the students didn't have access to computers. So we loaned out all of the laptop computers that we had across the 3 campuses. That was 700 laptops and internet access. This was probably the most difficult part of remote learning for our school because many people in Shepparton are disadvantaged. And not only didn't they have access to technology, but many of the parents were unable to help their children with work and with technology. So it meant that we set up an IT helpline. So a lot of teachers and parents and students were ringing the IT hotline to work out how to use all the programs. I think schools are generally constructed on a one-size-fits-all basis, and the remote learning experience really made it highlighted for us that it doesn't suit everybody. We probably need to be thinking about some different ways of catering to students who don't learn in the classroom of 25 very effectively. And for us, it also highlighted that we really need to enable everybody with technology. We can't be a fair and even society if we've got a lot of people who are unable to engage with the technology. So I have a few suggestions. Will I leave them for later, or do you want me to talk about them now, Scott?
I think that might be a nice provocation, Genevieve. That'd be fantastic.
So some of the things I think that we could do more of. Flipped learning could become the norm. That is where students do some work at home and then they use the school environment to do discussions and group work. Individual learning could be incorporated more effectively into school designs, which is actually being incorporated into our new school design, but isn't there very easily in existing schools. Small group learning spaces, which would allow casual teacher supervision rather than the teacher there all the time, might be useful. And a blended learning approach where some students work from home and then come into school for various more hands-on type of subjects might be good for some kids. A focus on teaching students individual responsibility and taking charge of their learning would be an underpinning requirement for all of those things, which would probably mean that we would need to think very carefully about our assessment practices and using things like learning management systems that would underpin those.
Well, that's a really nice set of ideas, Genevieve. I'm going to let them just settle there, everybody. We're going to just let them percolate. So if you've got particular questions of Genevieve, be sure to make sure you tag those across, and Liesel's got an eye on those. Oops. Just opening the wrong thing. Here we go. Perils of Zooming. The next person I'd like to introduce is Crispin Butterris. He is a parent and he's also a director of Bang the Table. Actually, Crispin was a co-founder of Australia's first product-focused online public engagement company. Brings some real relevance to this forum. I'm really keen to hear his reflections. The company was Bang the Table. They've got a software, Engagement HQ. It's been used by around about 2,000 government agencies in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, USA, the UK, and they basically consult with communities on all aspects of public policy, from tax and health reform to local pet control, local parks and pet control. He actually did a PhD as well. So Dr. Butterris has examined the application of adult and organisational learning practice to public engagement. Right now, he's a stay-at-home dad managing home learning and general entertainment for 3 boys under 10. I also know that Crispin is actually in the middle of a significant home renovation. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but at one point, Crispin, I wonder if you might reflect on how homeschooling has made you reflect on particular ways on the new renovation. You don't have to answer that question now. Is it up to isolation scratch, I wonder? My house certainly isn't. Over to you, Crispin, and thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and thanks for the invitation to come along tonight. I noticed that I'm probably the most civilian dressed of everybody here, and that's because I just came in from an hour in the park with the 3 boys. So I apologise for not being more formal, but that's my life at the moment. The work that we do, the company was founded about 12 years ago, and about 18 months ago I got to step back and be a full-time dad. So really during this period, under coronavirus, I am the full-time carer for the 3 boys. So we're fortunate that we're in the position that one of us can be full-time with the kids. My wife is working pretty much full-time, and she disappears into a little home office every morning and then comes out periodically through the day to tell us to be quiet or to grab a snack, and then disappears back inside again. And I spend a lot of time asking the boys to be quiet so that mummy can get on with her work and have all of her important meetings online and things like that. So listening to Genevieve speak, it was really provoked a lot as a parent with, so my boys are 10, 7 and 4. So the youngest isn't at school, but he requires monitoring, although he's a pretty good kid in that he'll just pull out stuff to do a lot of the time. But the other two, I'm in Melbourne based, just because people are all over the place. And so we're in lockdown again, which means we're going through our second round of the kids being homeschooled right now, which is trying. But this time round, I made a commitment to myself that I wasn't going to take all of the information that came from the school as seriously as I did last time. And that means not put the same pressure on myself that I did the first time around. We had these reams of tasks coming at us, and I felt like I had a responsibility as a parent to get through every single task every single day with my children, or I was somehow failing them as a parent. And that ended up causing a whole lot of stress in the house, and it caused us to start not liking each other very much by the end of each day. And so this time around, I've taken a very different approach. Now, the unfortunate thing is that I think the school did a survey and got a lot of feedback from parents suggesting that actually what their kids needed was a lot more structure and a lot more support and a lot more information and process from the school. And so I'm kind of going in the opposite direction to what the school is taking us in at the moment. And I've committed to my kids that the main things we're going to do are cooking, art, and physical activity, and we'll make sure that we get the essential tasks each day of reading, writing and maths done first thing in the morning, so they knock those over, and then the rest of the time that we'll basically enjoy each other's company a lot more, so that we don't finish this lockdown period hating each other, that we're actually a tighter, happier little unit of people. So we spend a lot of time basically together every day playing as much as we can, otherwise it all goes pretty awful. And I think because they are fortunate enough to have the availability of a full-time teacher's assistant in me, they take advantage of that, whereas some kids are probably better at independent learning and they can be put down in front of a computer and asked to get on with something. My boys compete with each other for my attention. So if I help one of them, then the other one straight away is, Dad, can you come over and help me with this? Dad, what do I do now? Dad, what? So it doesn't work. So I'm basically being full-time teacher. Now, so reflecting on what I used to do or what the company does, one of the things I've always loved about the online learning environment, the opportunity there, is that what I see from adults is that it gives us that space and freedom and time to slow down and reflect on whatever it is that's being put before us and to respond in a thoughtful way. Kids aren't the same as that, so it's a very different, it's a completely different experience that they have, and they can be overwhelmed and flustered by simple things going wrong. So the 7-year-old this morning had his Zoom meeting with his teacher and class, and the iPad ran out of battery halfway through the Zoom meeting. So he was in tears straight away, and it took 3 or 4 minutes for me to get it plugged in and get it charged up enough to get it started again so he could join the meeting, by which time he was red-eyed and in enormous emotional pain, because he's a boy that feels emotion deeply. Whereas his big brother's a bit more resilient and will just kind of get on with things a lot more. One of the things I've got out of this experience, though, that I would love to see, and I've wanted it for a while, but it's really hit me much more strongly, is how, as a parent, I would love for us to take the learning from this online learning process and apply it to the kids in an ongoing way when they're back at school, in terms of transparency around the curriculum and where they're at, so that we have access to kind of continuous learning about their experiences and what they're really struggling with, One of my boys has struggles a little with his literacy, and so he has special extra reading classes for that. And as a parent, I don't know, I'm sure there are other people in a similar situation. When I found out that he was struggling with his literacy, I felt like I'd failed him miserably because he's the middle child. And I just thought, well, that's just neglect. You know, the first one got me permanently, the last one gets me all the time, the middle one we just forgot about. And having access to knowing where he's at and what he's doing and what I should be doing to support him would be very, very helpful and motivating for both of us, I think, to keep on top of it, because it's really easy for those sorts of things to fall over when there's a lot of other things going on in your life. Scott, I don't want to dominate. We've not got all night, so I probably want to move on, mate.
Really interesting, and I think it's going to be quite thought-provoking, your comments about where the pressure lies and what the parent response might be, how to kind of release some of that pressure. I think that's really insightful. I noticed from Tom Barrett while you were talking at a very quick quip, but really insightful, to say, yes, Maslow before Bloom, which is kind of teacher talk for, yes, that's right. What you're doing is fundamentally, it's essentially correct, I think. I don't mean to talk for Tom. Perhaps you'll want to shape up his question, but I thought that was interesting. Thank you, mate. That's really good. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Sandy Law next. Sandy is from Law Architects. She's director at Law Architects, and she's the past chair of Learning Environments Australasia Vic chapter, although it was going by a different name in those days, Sandy. I think it was CEFB. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. She's also represented LEA at a regional level, and she and her team have won numerous awards. She also specialises in stakeholder engagement and making the most out of space, and I think that's testament to that is that this year at the LEA Regional Awards, Law Architects won the prestigious overall prize for Carlton Education Precinct, the Carlton Primary School. If you get a chance to check that out online through the socials, do that. It's fantastic work. And although Sandy just told me before, it's quite fresh off the press that they also won the Australian Institute of Architects Award for Urban Design. So congratulations, Sandy. That's really
Victorian chapter. Yeah, but yes.
Yeah, great. Look, I'm going to throw straight over to you. Sandy also has, she's in Melbourne, and she also has two uni students at home as well. So again, a different kind of experience of learning in isolation. But I'll throw over to you, Sandy. Welcome.
Thanks, and welcome. Hello, everybody. Gosh, yeah, what a roller coaster, hey? And I think similar to sort of Crispin, the differences between round two, we're in Melbourne, and we have all been as a practice at home, other than one or two from the office. And there's 20 odd people working from home since middle of March, pretty much. So it's been a long journey for us individually and collectively, you know, so many learnings and so much hacking of technology. It's unbelievable. I think that's been one of the biggest, you know, sort of experiences that has surprised us. We would never have thought that we'd be involved in the amount of technological change, different ways of communicating, trying to practice, you know, trying one platform, failing on that one, jumping to another one. One doesn't necessarily suit the next conversation that we might be wanting to have on a different topic too. So, yeah, I think as a group, we've learnt how to do things very, very differently. And at the same time, I want to say, enabling the possibility of a very different future to play out for us all in possibly really positive ways. I can see the whole blended learning, the blended workplace and flexible workplace playing out. I mean, it's playing out before our eyes, and I think there's a lot of us that are pretty damn excited about that too. So, you know, the opportunity that we can, you know, sort of work from home when we want, however we want, and then come and bump in and sort of connect. It's raising up so many questions as a workforce. What is a workplace? You know, what is an office, you know, and why do we need one, and what does it look like, what are we doing there? And I think there's been a lot of conversations I know that we're having with other practices as well, and other practices citing that, you know, perhaps they should just release themselves of that burden of the huge, you know, sort of rental property that they've got somewhere in the middle of the city, or, you know, somewhere, wherever it might be as well, and really think differently about where they sort of collaborate and where they work together. So I think, you know, there's some really good things coming out of it. I think watching my uni students has been really interesting, because to be honest, I think they're doing it harder than a lot of us, harder than a lot of us at the workplace, I should say, because that social connection that young people really have the opportunity to do in the outside environment is really, really challenging. And I am concerned about how the technology supports that or doesn't enable that, and I'm really looking forward to what will happen with the change over the next sort of 6 months, as people become really much more comfortable in turning their screens on and sort of revealing themselves, and allowing, you know, that frog to be seen in the back, the back of the screen. And I've already had people, Scott, you know, texting me from my team saying, what's Scott's owl behind him? What's that all about too? So, you know, we are letting people into our worlds in so many different ways, and you know what, that's pretty bloody good, and that's okay. And we might all start to sort of really rethink how we, you know, what we see as the right way to present ourselves, what is formal, you know, what is comfortable, you know, how we should be comfortable with each other, and really, I think, embrace the lovely aspects of you know, sort of connecting and questioning each other too. And it's totally fine for Crispin to be wearing a G-Star or hoodie if he chooses to. You know, I think that space, to me, that space sort of feels like we've moved on, and I think that's fantastic. So, you know, what that means for learning spaces, wow, what a fantastic opportunity. I think the thing to note that every architect out there in that room will be very aware of, architects have been ready for this for a very long time, and are very comfortable in thinking about space very, very differently. And I'm really looking forward to the time, the revolution that is upon us, where we actually where the curriculum is actually starting to respond to some of these offerings that different settings and the diversity of settings will actually afford. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, that's great. I'm just in the interest of moving along nice and quickly. I see that there's lots of chat going on in the chat box. That makes me, I'm really pleased about that. There's also chats going on with people who know each other who are in the forums, so that's fantastic too. What I'm going to do now is very quickly move across, because I don't want to miss the chance to chat with or hear from Emily. We've got Emily Grundy. You can see her as well. She's a Year 12 student from Bendigo in regional Victoria. So we're actually not in lockdown, are we, Emily? And she's a member of the Victorian SRC and as part of the Student Executive Advisory Committee. Emily, please let me know if I've got this right. She believes that student voice and advocacy is important, that students fighting and working with other students is more powerful than someone doing it on their behalf. And in her spare time, she enjoys reading, walking her dogs, and also volunteering at the local Headspace organisation. So I'm really pleased to introduce you to Emily as an emerging leader. I'm going to pass over to you, Emily.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. I just wanted to say that I think it's really interesting to hear from all the different perspectives you've got on this panel tonight, from the principal to the students to then just a parent. And I think that it's always really eye-opening to see different perspectives about how education affects people in so many different ways, and how even though you might not be in school yourself and you know you've moved on with your life, it's still affecting you. And I think that this home learning has taught us so much, and it's really opened a door for what our education system can look like in the future, because obviously no one could have said that achieving a remote learning education would be possible, and yet we managed to do it in a matter of weeks. And I think to ignore that or let it go, you know, unacknowledged would be really ridiculous, because now we have this door to then move forward into what this can look like you've all said about how different it has been to hear about education being done remotely, and you know, a new access into different lives, and breaking down barriers between the student and teacher relationship. And I think that's something to really, you know, sink in. But sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that for now.
That's okay. Emily, do you want to tell us a little bit about your work with the SRC? I know Nina's going to pick up a little bit on this, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about that work, and maybe even the more recent survey that you did specific to homeschooling.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Victorian Student Representative Council, we are the peak body for education in Victoria, where essentially it's a group of 15 students from all different diverse backgrounds and areas across our state, where we come together to fight for our education and show what students believe should be prioritised in our own education. And as a organisation and who has a direct link to our Department of Education, we were requested to do a survey on the experiences of remote learning and what students took away from that. And that showed a lot of things that's reflected in what you guys are looking into as architects about spaces. You know, like your video showed the feeling of comfort and the seating and being able to be flexible in what you studied during that day, because you have the capacity to not be locked down into a classroom for 70-minute sessions, was something that we also found. But there was also, you know, the downside of how, you know, okay is it for me to be able to look into your video, Scott, and see that you've got owls and frames on your wall, and like, isn't that an invasive perspective from a student who is a minor? Like, you know, a positive from parents, and, you know, in a work environment, it can be really interesting to be like, hey, I get to know you a bit better. But from a student, it's like, you're looking into my space and I can feel quite vulnerable in this. So there's definitely a lot of pros and cons too about what home spaces can do.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, that's really good. And I think there's been a quick question on the survey that was put together by the Vic SRC, and that might be a really good opportunity to introduce Nina, who's the Executive Officer at the Vic SRC. This is Nina, and the Vic SRC is the peak body for school-age students in Victoria, and her background is in arts with a particular focus on songwriting. She's a pretty passionate advocate about ensuring that silenced, marginalised and vulnerable communities have platforms for accessible and authentic storytelling to help make decisions about their own lives. And she's a parent of 3 primary school age children and a musician whenever she gets any spare time, which I can't imagine is very often. Nina, over to you.
Thanks, Scott. And thanks everyone for having Emily and I on this panel. It's really interesting, and we've learnt a lot over the past few months, and we continue to learn. I'd just like to acknowledge too that I'm here on Wurundjeri land in the Kulin Nations, and I think during this time, another perspective that's been brought up a lot is the perspective of our First Nations people, and that connection to country and that connection to community, and that's become a real really highlighted during this period. I think the fascinating thing from Vic SRC's perspective and my own perspective as the executive officer is that not only do I work with students and their experience of school, my perspective as a parent and my children's experience of school, but Vic SRC is quite a unique organisation in which we have a part of our governance is actually school students. So like Sandy, we've also had to move all of our work online. So that includes having all of our meetings with students where we've been, you know, having to have some fairly serious meetings all through Zoom. So it's been a really fascinating experience and really challenging. But we've really seen that through I think having students around, and that I suppose that really flexible and adaptable nature that we often see in young people, we've been able to adapt really quickly. And we've, you know, I think created some quite innovative ways of communicating, not just with our students, but also with the wider community of students in Victoria. We've probably had the most engagement than we ever had with students across Victoria. And I think part of that is because they're feeling quite disempowered throughout this whole process. There hasn't been a lot of opportunities for students to have a voice in decisions that have huge impacts on their education, but their lives moving forward. So we've really seen that VicSRC as an organisation that's representing students to decision makers and making sure there's space at the table for them has become even more relevant than it normally is. And we're hoping that, you know, that relevancy and that connection with students and engagement continues. I'll just briefly talk about the report which can be found on our Student Voice Hub, and I put the website for that in the chat. It's just in the news part. We wanted to really hear directly from students. So the report is absolutely full of student quotes, and I think that's a really strong part of the report. We've written it very accessibly. It's designed to be read by educators, by students, by decision makers, by policy makers, by parents. Anyone that's remotely interested in education, we believe that they can get a lot out of this. And we've really kept the voice of students with all warts and all, so to speak, which creates a really strong image of what the experiences were like. As Emily's pointed out, some of the key findings that we found and the recommendations that came from that report were around student agency, that equitable access to internet and devices, online platforms, and having them integrated in schooling, providing that flexibility was a really strong theme that came out. Mental health support is something that continues to be a huge priority for our organisation to ensure that students from primary school right up until secondary school have that access to free and appropriate mental health support. The flexibility within the school structure, which talks about, you know, the actual physical structure, but also in terms of classes, start times. A few panelists have already pointed out that this is something that we need to consider in future. And finally, probably most relevant to learning environments, students really want to be comfortable at school. They want to be warm, they want to be able to eat, they want to sit on comfortable chairs, and that came very strongly through the video and throughout the report.
Thanks very much, Nina. I think I had a look at that report earlier today, and it's a great bit of communication as well. So thanks for sharing that link. And I think Liesl shared the link too, and that's freely available. It's quite a nice piece of qualitative research, well presented as well. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Now, unfortunately, we really are out of time, and we're conscious of keeping people beyond the 6 o'clock time that we had indicated. So we don't really have time for any questions, but what I think has been really clear is kind of the complexity of the range of responses, the scenarios that students face, the impact on parents, the issues that schools are needing to kind of grapple with at a fundamental level. And so we don't have a time for a question, but I think I just want to pick up on one thing as a kind of a closing comment, one or two things that seem to bring some of the conversations together. And that is that, and this is coming from Emily, I think it would be ridiculous to ignore the great capacity for change that people have demonstrated over a really short period of time. And it would, I think, be equally as ridiculous to ignore the insights from this set of experiences. I think if we and this is a Dewey quote, I think, if we continue to do what we do and expect something else, then we would be surely barking up the wrong tree, which is to bastardize that quote. But ought we to continue to do what we've always done? I think to pick up from what Genevieve was saying earlier on, it's a really good opportunity, given the clear nature of our capacity to change, to think carefully about those things. I think there's evidently pressure on schools, through Crispin's anecdotes, at least from other parents, to just continue to give us more of what we've always had. And I think that is surely we need to work more critically than that. We really need to work more critically than that. And I hope that tonight's conversation has allowed us to get some perspectives, share some insights that allow us to start those conversations, to carry these ideas forward. So I'd really just like to pause and thank wholeheartedly Genevieve, Sandy, Emily, Crispin, and Nina as well. I really appreciate your time this evening. You've given us your time for free and generously shared your insights. It's fantastic to bring them all together. Thank you to everybody out there who has been listening and have been contributing to the chat. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thanks again to Interface as well for supporting it. Thanks Liesl, who's done a bunch of work in the background. Also thanks to Georgie, who put the whole thing together, and the team in the LEA Vic chapter. So
yeah, thanks Scott, and thank you very much for your fabulous hosting today. I've put a comment in there to say that we've deliberately kept this session to an hour. We know that people are spending a lot of time online, and so we're quite conscious that this has been very tight. We haven't had a lot of opportunity for questions, unfortunately. We will be sending some follow-up material and links and information to LEA members, so please keep an eye on that. And if anyone's really keen for a follow-up discussion with everyone on camera and a bit more free form, let us know and we'll see if we can throw something together, you know, just for a really casual chat over a glass of wine perhaps. So let us know if that's something you might be interested in.
fantastic. Thanks Liesl. Thank you everybody, and good night.